All right, everyone, it's 3 o'clock. We'll give people maybe another 2 minutes to hop on. But if you don't know who I am, my name is Brittany Rivera. I realize my name is EMSDC on here, but my name is Brittany Rivera. I am the program director for EMSDC. I've been with the council for about 9 years. You may know my name from certification. You may know it from sending invoices or or just being our program director recently. So thank you for joining us. Again, we'll give people another minute or so to hop on. We are in for, I think, a treat considering oh, there we go. Hi, Sophia. How are you? I think this is a topic of conversation that most business owners have questions on, and we're happy that you're here to partake in this. Today's session is being recorded, so we are recording the whole thing. Once we are finished, it will be released on our video library. But we do encourage you to stay because there's probably some questions that you'll have. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A chat box or raise your hand so that you can be brought up stage and we can address any concerns or questions that you may have. All right, so I'll get started because I think today is going to be a little bit heavy information. So I'm going to get started. Today we have Nancy, who holds the position of Business Community Officer at Bank of America, where she advocates for diverse, multicultural, and under-resourced communities across Massachusetts. She is a highly regarded keynote speaker and a financial leader who leads financial literacy initiatives. And her main objective is to empower women and biopic entrepreneurs in overcoming systemic barriers. So I'm going to let Nancy take over.
Thank you, Brittany. Can we do a quick favor first? Can we introduce my lovely colleague, Sophia?
Yes.
Sophia, thank you so very, very much for joining. If you wouldn't mind, just explain what you do out in the community as well, your name, your position, how long you've been at the bank, and so forth. I think that would be really helpful to our guests.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Sophia Nicot. I have been with Bank of America for 20 years, going into my 21st. Currently working in business banking. So my job is to support business owners as they grow, as they become a company that wants to continue that path of success, as I'm sure everyone does. And I support with lending, I support with treasury products, in a range of products, anything and everything. I am local in Philadelphia area and cover Delaware, a little bit of New Jersey. So I am, although work for a big bank, I'm local and very much, love to meet in person. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to, support.
Excellent. Thank you so very much, Sophia. And Brittany, thank you for the warm welcome. I see some familiar names from last week. So those of you who are brave enough to come back for more, I think we're going to have a really fun time today talking about how we can help you purchase owner-occupied commercial real estate. Please, also in terms of housekeeping, if you have any questions, if you have feedback or an experience that you would like to share, I'm a very casual presenter, so please raise your hand or shout it out. Brittany will be sort of quarterbacking and managing the chat because I'm unable to see your chat, unfortunately. So it'll be really helpful if you want to speak up, just to let us know. So over the course of the next hour, we are going to talk, as I said, about purchasing owner-occupied commercial real estate. We're going to talk about some of the benefits thereof. Also, what are the financing terms? How does purchasing and financing commercial real estate differ from maybe the mortgage that you took out when you bought your first home or your first condominium? And then lastly, we're going to provide you with a map, a roadmap for success, and kind of some next steps. And that's where Sophia and I can help you out if you are interested in entering the market. All right, so when we think about commercial real estate and benefits, purchasing commercial can really be one of the best investments, if not the best investment that you ever make. It really changes the entire trajectory of your entire balance sheet. Okay, so that's basically a schedule of your net worth, how much you have in assets minus your liabilities. And at the end of the day, your net worth is calculated. It is true, purchasing commercial real estate can be a little bit more complex than buying a home on the residential side. It does take a little bit longer. It's a little bit more expensive, and it definitely takes a lot of research and planning. But in the right circumstance, in the right location, as I said, the rewards can really be pretty fantastic. So when we think about commercial, a lot of times I'll get someone to who raises their hand and says, "Hey, Nancy, can you just define what is commercial property?" So technically, it's really wherever a business can be run out of. But when you get more granular, when you're looking at real estate, you want to look for office, retail space, manufacturing, industrial warehouses. There's something called special purpose property. So when you think about like a religious organization, a church, or a bowling alley, those are properties that are special use. By definition, it's not that easy to convert a church or a bowling alley into retail space or an office. There's also multi family. So in the finance world, between 1 and 4 units is deemed to be residential, and then 5 units and above is commercial. Okay. And then we also have mixed use space, which you may not realize you probably see every day of the week. So mixed use might look like a cafe or a liquor store or dry cleaners on the bottom storefront. And then atop that would be residential or commercial housing units. So that would be mixed use. So all of these properties do fall under the commercial property banner per se. And it's very important to call this out to your banker or your lender in terms of what type of property you are interested in. Should you be moving towards purchasing your own property versus leasing? So there are many, many benefits, as I've said. And the ones that come to mind on the slide that you can see are building equity, locking into fixed or predictable payments, tax breaks and savings, total control versus giving control to your landlord, public record and public exposure, and then also income potential. Okay, so we're going to break those down one by one. So when we think about building equity, or appreciation happens over time. It's basically the difference between what the property is worth and the principal balance of the loan. So if you buy a property for $500,000 in 2025, chances are pretty high that in 2030, which is 5 more years, the property is likely going to appreciate. Maybe it's worth 650,000 or 700,000. Every market is different, but you're building equity by way of making payments each month. So every payment chips away at the principal balance and creates an equity position. And like I said earlier, it's a huge cog in your playbook when you think about retirement and, what do I want to leave my family? What do I want to leave the next generation? Usually real estate, whether it's residential or commercial, generally appreciates. That's why it can be a very, very wise decision. Also, and Brittany, I'm going to ask for your help here because I can't see cameras or the chat box, but how many business owners do we have with us in the room who lease space or pay rent for their business? Do we have anybody?
Folks, you can use your raise hand emoji, or you can type in the chat if you like.
I can see the raised hands. I can't see the chat, but that's okay. A lot of businesses today work from home. That's great. We have at least one person who leases. That's great. So Leo, thank you. So when you lease space, and Leo, I'm sure you concur, you are always at the mercy of whatever it is that your landlord likes, whether it's changing parking, whether it's doing improvements to the building or not making those improvements. When your lease expires, it's up to the landlord as to whether or not he or she wants to raise rent or even renew you. Different signage that you can display also is subject to the landlord's appetite or liking. So you basically don't have a lot of control. And if in fact your landlord does not renew your lease, now how many customers could you potentially lose because you have to find new space? Or we all know that the market is a little crazy right now. So if your rent goes up, are you still able to afford it? And hopefully the answer is yes. But when you actually purchase commercial real estate, you're locking in, at least with Bank of America, to a fixed rate. So you have a predictable payment. You know exactly how much your mortgage is going to be. Your taxes and your insurance could fluctuate, but you're going to pay those separately. Okay. But predictable payments gives us peace of mind, and peace of mind usually translates into a good night's sleep, which is something that we all are interested in. Okay. Next up is actually tax savings, tax breaks. I'm sure many of you know that when you have a mortgage, whether it's real estate on the residential side or the commercial, you're paying interest, you're paying taxes, and then there's also depreciation. And while I'm not an attorney, I'm not a tax preparer or a CPA, most times you can actually obtain a tax break by listing the amount of interest that you've paid, the real estate taxes, and also depreciation, which means you're going to, in the end, pay less taxes. So there are some benefits here to having a mortgage, owning your own space versus paying your landlord's mortgage. And oh, by the way, for the ladies on the phone, there's an interesting statistic out there. Of all the real estate across the United States on the commercial side, would you believe that only 3% of commercial real estate is owned by women? So for those of you who are paying a lease or thinking about leasing space, it's very likely that your landlord will be a male. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but we women really need to take ownership of our futures and create a path for generational wealth for our families. And one of the things that you can do to accomplish that is purchase your own property and maybe have tenants who help you pay your mortgage. And we'll talk about that in a moment. We also touched a moment ago about control and how, sometimes the landlord can make decisions that maybe are not favorable for our business. You, as your own landlord, as a mortgage holder, can really decide, when do I want to put a new roof on the building? Do I want to re-asphalt the driveway, the parking area? What aesthetic improvements do I want to make? That's up to you. And then also, anytime you own real estate, that is public record. And particularly on the commercial side, you get a lot of attention, a lot of public exposure. Your property might be sort of like a landmark in town. It's your brand. It's really up to you to establish your brand by way of maintaining the property, putting out signage, the type of tenants you attract, and so forth. So you do get a lot of notoriety and attention when you in fact own your own real estate. Last but not least, you have the ability to create an additional income stream. So not only do you have operational cash flow, but if you own your own commercial property, and for purposes of this discussion, as I mentioned, we're talking about owner occupied. So that means that let's see, so Amy or Erica, this means that you and your business occupy the building that you're going to purchase. And we're going to talk about the different types of loans and the amount of square footage that you would have to occupy. But let's just keep things really simple for now. 51% of the square footage of the property that you're looking to purchase, if we're using our small business administration product, is space that you would have to occupy. So it's about half of the building. So that gives you ample opportunity to attract tenants to help you pay the mortgage. So if you have additional units in the property, or an opportunity to put up walls or customize the property, you could actually have 2, 3, maybe 4 other businesses, say sending you rent each month and paying, if not the whole mortgage, a large portion of that. And over time, you can see how this would really, really add up. And again, potentially change your trajectory, because you'll have more cash flow, more disposable cash flow. Okay. So I'm going to pause here, Brittany, just to see if there are any questions out there. We talked about the definition of commercial space, and we talked a little bit about the 6 benefits of purchasing commercial real estate. So does anyone have anything that they'd like to share, or any questions they'd like to ask?
No, we had a few people join, but I don't see anything in the chat
Okay.
yet.
All right.
However, Jose Silva did say that they do lease as well, and that their annual, I would say, interest goes up 3% every year. So on a 5 year.
See, that's a big, big dollar amount, or it could be a big dollar amount depending on how much your rent is. So, Jose, I'm sure that's not a comfortable conversation to have with your landlord, and it's not a great payment to be making month over month. So there you go. When you own your property, your payment just remains the same as long as you're in a fixed rate product. So thanks
So
for
you
sharing.
can't see this chat, Nancy, but Jose just shared that currently he is paying quite a large amount, and I'll let you know what that is after the call.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. I love engagement. I love questions. I love comments in the chat. So keep it up, guys. We're going to move over to talking about, what does the financing of commercial real estate look like? What are the terms? What should you take away from this chat? And how is commercial financing a little bit different from residential financing? Okay. There are many different options, as you may have guessed. We at Bank of America are both an SBA preferred lender, and we also offer conventional loans. But the terms that I'm going to speak to in a moment are pretty standard regardless of where you finance. So whether it's a bank, a savings and loan institution, a credit union, a broker, these are the terms that you really want to become familiar with. So we're going to start at the top, and we're going to talk about amortization. So amortization is really the way that mortgage payments are calculated, both when you buy a home on the residential side and also commercial real estate. And as you may have guessed, particularly if you're a homeowner, each payment you make is a combination of a little bit of principal and a whole lot of interest, particularly at the beginning. And then over time, you end up, that kind of changes, and you end up at the end of your loan paying more principal than interest. So one of the things you want to ask your lender is, what kind of amortization do you offer? So what kind of term, how many years? That's called a fixed rate term or an adjustable rate term. And actually, we'll stop right there for a second. Most financial institutions on the commercial side will offer you an adjustable or variable interest rate. So I'm going to say that differently. Most commercial loans for real estate are adjustable. Maybe they're fixed for 5 years and then they adjust, or they're fixed for 7 years and then they adjust based on the open market. And they're usually amortized for 15 or 20 years at the most. Okay. So why is that important? Well, we're in very, very uncertain times, as we all know. And when you have a variable interest rate, that means that your interest rate after a certain period of time can adjust to whatever the market conditions are at that point. So if the market got worse and interest rates are higher, you could have been paying a 7% rate for 5 years, and you could jump up to 10% or even higher, depending upon what the index is or the margin. So at Bank of America, we offer only fixed rate terms. We want our clients to have peace of mind and just to have, stability, if you will, in making your mortgage payments. There's also a clause in your mortgage note regarding maturity. So the maturity date is the date that the entire loan, principal, interest, everything needs to be paid in full. So you definitely want to take notes and write that down, because every lender I've noticed, I've been doing this for 32 years, lending in the consumer and commercial space. And depending upon where you choose to finance, all of these terms could look dramatically different. Okay. Some loans actually have what we call a balloon payment, a balloon payment. So by nature of what a balloon is, a big balloon, you may have a 10-year note with a balloon. So at 10 years, your payment becomes, your whole loan balance rather, becomes due. So if you took out a $500,000 mortgage for 10 years of the balloon, it's possible that after 10 years, your mortgage balance might be $300,000. And if there's a balloon, guess what? That whole $300,000 balance is now due. So you have a couple of choices. You can either go into your savings account if you are fortunate enough to have that $300,000 and pay it off, or you can ask your existing mortgage company to refinance. They may or may not do that. Or thirdly, you would have to work with another mortgage company or another bank to refinance the existing balance. And at that point, you don't know what the rates are going to be. You're not sure of the value of your property. So you're essentially starting over and incurring all of the expenses that factor in when you do a commercial mortgage closing. So we typically do not at Bank of America put balloon clauses on our mortgages. But again, please write that down in the notes. Some of you may not be in the market today, and that's fine. This is really educational. So whether it's 3, 4, 7 years out, you can look back on your notes and kind of remind yourself of some of the steps that you need to take and some of the finance terms that you want to be aware of. Okay. I think everyone with us today knows what an interest rate is, so we won't go there, but we will spend a minute talking about loan to value. So loan to value, it's very similar to when you bought your house. It relates to how much of a down payment, how much skin in the game do you need to come up with as a business owner to get this mortgage? So when we think about small business administration, and I'm going to get a little bit more granular on the next slide, but small business administration, SBA loans, allow for us to have you put just 10% of the purchase price into the loan. So the loan to value would be 90% because you're putting in 10. Okay. So that just has to be funds that come from your own savings or your own means. And typically the bank will finance the 90%. Okay. Collateral. So I'm pretty sure last time, if you were with us last week, we defined what collateral is. And those of you who are with us, remember, collateral is another name for insurance, or essentially an asset that you're going to pledge to secure the loan. So with real estate, the collateral is actually the building itself. The property is the collateral. And there's an old saying in the business, if you don't pay, we take it away. So if you don't pay the mortgage after you go through a process, the bank will take back the asset, which is essentially the real estate. Okay. So right-hand side, we're working from guarantor down. So anytime you do a business loan, whether it's a line of credit, a term loan, a mortgage, the borrowing entity is going to be the business or the real estate holding company that you set up. So for me, I tend to buy real estate with my husband, and I usually name the holding company the address. So we just bought 5 Paddock Lane Incorporated. So that would be the borrower, but the guarantor would be me, Nancy Rosedale. If and when I have my credit pulled, this new commercial mortgage that I'm going to do will not come up on my personal credit report, okay? We do pull credit once because you are the guarantor, you are the individual that is guaranteeing that the payments are going to be made, but the actual debt will not populate on your personal credit report because it truly is a business loan, okay? So that's the good news. Now, most of the time, when you finance commercial real estate, there are going to be some extra fees and a couple of more processes than maybe you remember when you bought your first home. One of which is an origination fee. Most commercial mortgages are going to have some sort of fee at the top of the process. It is a fee that is charged by the lender, and it usually includes all the processing and all the underwriting and the work that goes into obtaining the financing, okay? So sometimes they're negotiable. Lenders charge different origination fees. Today's reason for talking about it is, again, just to educate you so you know what questions to ask when, in fact, you are applying for a commercial mortgage. So usually if there's a 1% fee and you're doing a $500,000 mortgage, 1% would be $5,000 that would be rolled into your closing costs, okay? And then also, I talked a second ago about the process being a little bit longer and in some cases a little bit more expensive than residential financing. So like the residential world, we always do an appraisal. An appraisal is a report on the residential side of, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16 pages, and it might cost $400 or $500. On the commercial side, a commercial appraisal is easily 45 pages, often takes about a month to complete, and the fees are going to range based on what type of property and the location that you're in. So it might range on the low side from $1,500, maybe up to about $5,000 for a huge commercial space with a lot of complexity. And an appraisal is really measuring the market value against recent or similar comps or comparables within a certain geographic radius. So what other properties that are like the one you're purchasing have sold? Do they have similar amenities, similar square feet, similar rental income? So that's the appraisal. And then we also do what's called an environmental evaluation. Now, this is where it can get a little bit tricky. So it's an environmental evaluation, and it is a very comprehensive, sometimes complicated analysis of the subject property that you're interested in to determine, are there any risks associated? Is the soil beneath the property contaminated? Is there an underground oil tank? Has there been any leakage? They also look at air quality and history. And what happens when you buy a piece of commercial real estate, the seller will complete what's called an environmental questionnaire. And there might be 20 questions on the questionnaire, and the seller's responsibility is to answer those questions as true and accurately as he or she can based on their knowledge of the property, okay? And, you know, there is an attestation at the bottom, you know, regarding the seller being honest about what he or she knows. And then what happens is we use that questionnaire, we enter all the information into a computer program, and it does a digital search of the immediate location to see, have there been any past environmental concerns within a certain radius? So we're looking down the street, you know, we're not going miles away, immediate area. If you're close to an old dry cleaner, if you're close to an old auto body shop or a gas station, chances are there's some sort of environmental history there. And if it comes back as a positive, in other words, that there is some sort of environmental history, We then typically have to go to what's called phase one. Phase one. And that is a deeper dive, and that is a physical inspection. So it's not digital, it's not online. And that is usually an out-of-pocket expense for the buyer. Phase one can be a couple of $1,000s. The bank hires an independent environmental inspector, if you will, and the report is provided to the buyer and to the realtors and so forth. And again, most of the time they come back clean. But I live in New England, for example, in Boston. And New England is very, very old. We have a lot of old real estate. So around here, because the real estate is older, we unfortunately have a great deal of environmental issues, and a lot of loans get stuck at that phase one process. And by stuck, it means that there was something that came up that needs to be further investigated. And guess what we call that? Phase two. Phase two can be very expensive. And again, it's something typically, if the buyer wants to move forward and loves this property for whatever reason, it's something that the buyer pays for. It can be $15,000, $30,000 or more. But I have seen a lot of buyers or buyers' brokers do a really nice job in negotiating with the seller. And sometimes the seller pays that. So if the seller is highly motivated and is very sure or confident there are no environmental issues and he or she wants to unload that property, they could, in some instances, pay that phase two. But a bank cannot close on the mortgage without remedying any environmental concerns and getting clean reports. And you might be sitting there saying, wow, this is a lengthy process. It sounds expensive. It can be, but at the end of the day, you really don't want to buy a property that has an environmental issue that has not been remedied, because you would be inheriting a legal battle, a very expensive situation, and potentially a property that you could never sell. So we're protecting ourselves because we want to make sure you're going to pay. And we're also protecting you because we don't want to put you in a bad situation. Okay. So that covers environmental inspections and evaluations and appraisals. And there are two more items on here. There's a prepayment penalty and also soft cost. So when we think back to our residential mortgages, most of us very likely have a mortgage that we can prepay at any time without penalty. On the commercial side, you want to ask your lender or your bank if there is a penalty for prepayment. And if there is, what does it look like? Sometimes there can be a 3-year penalty. So if you pay off your mortgage down to zero, then the first 3 years, you might have a 5% penalty or 3% penalty. Or you could have what we call a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what that translates to is if you pay off the mortgage down to zero in the first year, your penalty is 5%. If you pay it off in the second year, your penalty is 4%, and so forth. You can see where I'm going with this. So again, that's definitely a question that you want to ask. But honestly, most people who buy commercial real estate do not want to pay it off in the first 5 years. They don't have the cash. They bought the property to be in for a long, long time. They want to will the property to their heirs, to the next generation. We don't see a whole lot of commercial properties being bought and sold regularly, if that makes sense. And lastly, we talk about soft costs. Soft costs could be closing costs. If you're doing construction and you had an architect come up with a scope of work or some drawings, those fees might be in there. Appraisal fees, and really any fees that it would take to close the mortgage are considered soft costs. Okay. Any questions regarding some of these finance terms, or if you want any more clarity, raise your hand in the chat, or you can even type a question in the chat that Brittany will read to us.
So we do have a question, but I think this was actually before we actually started the financial
That's okay.
terminology, right? So Lee asked if we are going to dive into the purchasing real estate from a business perspective and then negotiating prices, or factoring rent payments, etc.
We're going to get into that a little bit on the last page, but we are also going to open it up for Q&A. So if there's anything that hasn't been addressed, I can absolutely try to tackle that. And if I don't know the answer, my friend Sophia will jump in because she's been with the bank for a very, very long time. And she's a tremendous resource to the Philadelphia market. So thank you, Brittany. So when we think about how are we going to purchase this commercial real estate, I mentioned earlier that there are usually a couple of different ways, a couple of different products. The first is through the Small Business Administration. And for those of you who were business owners back in 2020 in the height of COVID, you know the SBA because they came up with the PPP loan. We are at Bank of America what we call preferred SBA lenders. And in short, what that means to you as customers is we essentially make our own SBA loans here in-house at the bank. We don't have to ship the loan package out to the SBA, which can add another 45 days to the already long process. So we have our own approval officers, as we call them, and we love SBA for many reasons. The first is that you as the buyer only have to put usually 10% down, in some cases 15%, but generally 10%. And what that means is that you can keep your cash in the bank, or that's another way of saying that is the benefit there is asset preservation. What can you do with the rest of your cash by way of investing it, keeping it for operational cash flow, or maybe using it to improve your building, okay? The SBA also allows us to extend a fixed rate, get this guys, of 25 years. And that is unheard of for anyone who's bought a property before in the commercial space. Most banks will do 15 years, sometimes 20 years. The 25-year term is only available through the SBA, okay? And then lastly, but not least, SBA is a little bit more forgiving and flexible as it relates to qualifying for a loan. So last week we talked about capacity and cash flow, and we talked about you business owners needing to really demonstrate $1.25 of cash flow for every dollar of expenses. Well, that is also true of real estate, but the SBA is really just looking for $1.10, or in some cases $1.15 for every dollar of expenses. So it's a little bit easier to qualify. Brittany, I actually am able suddenly to see the chat. This is awesome. All of a sudden it just popped up on me. Somebody asked, what are interest rates? Sophia probably knows a little bit more than I do about that, but I've seen 6 and 7. Sophia, if you know anything more, or if you want to put out a ballpark rate, you can certainly come off mute and join the conversation.
No, I think that that's about right. I mean, we are seeing some decreases and we're hoping it comes up. But as of right now, I think 6 or 7 is the benchmark. It changes daily, so it really depends.
Thank you. Okay. And now I'm seeing the chat from Jose saying that he's paying $60,000 a month. Jose, we should absolutely chat after this call, or at least sometime in the near future. That is unbelievable. All right. So Sophia, thank you. So that's our SBA product. SBA also does a lot of cool stuff. It allows us to partner out in the community with what we call a CDC, community development financing partner. So we can actually split up the loan into 2 pieces. You put 10% in, we put 50% in, and the CDC comes up with 40. We can do tenant improvements. So if you rent out space and you don't own this space, you're leasing this space, but you need to knock down walls. You need to outfit the space so that it fits your business model. We can actually help you with an SBA loan, a term loan, for what we call tenant improvements. We can also finance equipment, trailers. We love to help landscapers, anyone in logistics. The SBA, like I said, does a lot of really cool things. And then we also have your traditional or your conventional small business or commercial loan. Conventional is similar, but it's going to require that you as a buyer come up with 20% down instead of 10. So 20% in today's market, particularly in Philadelphia or New Jersey or Boston where I am, it can be a big, big down payment. In the maximum term is 20 years instead of 25. You can see in some situations, the payments might be higher. What we like to do, Sophia and I have some software where we can plug in the numbers for you, and we can print out a spreadsheet and show you 4 different options of what it could look like if you bought your own property, if you put 10% down versus 20%, if we did a 7A loan versus a 504. So we do have a lot of different options. And if you're anything like me, you want to see that visual. It's one thing to talk about it, but you really want to see those payments in writing. All right, so we talked about SBA, conventional, and tenant improvement. We didn't talk about ground up construction. So if you are looking to put up your own building, you have a parcel of land, or you're looking to buy a parcel of land, we could help you through the SBA and our 7A program. We could actually do what's called ground up construction. So you would need an architect, a general contractor. We would need to see the scope of work. And again, the property would have to be at least 51% occupied by you, of course, based on square footage. Projects like that do happen. They take a little bit longer. I'm in process right now of building a house, and trust me, even though my husband's the builder, I believe, I think he told me there are 32,000 decisions that need to be made. And on the commercial side, there are probably more. So buckle up, but it's definitely something that we can help you with. All right, so for those of you wondering, so how do I get from point A to point B? We've talked about the benefits. I think we're all convinced of the whys behind, paying a mortgage versus your landlord's mortgage. We talked about what commercial space looks like. We talked a little bit about the finance terms and sort of the down payments and all of that. Now, where do you go from here, right? So we want to put together sort of a roadmap. First thing that you want to decide upon is your objectives, okay? And we're going to talk about these on the next slide in more granularity. You also want to figure out what is important with the subject property that I'm buying. Third is you're going to need a team, okay? You're going to need a team of experts around you. And then you're also going to need a to-do list. Let's first start with the objectives. So you want to look at the various property types that we started out this presentation with and determine which one would be most appropriate for your business model. Remember, there's retail, there's office, there's manufacturing space, industrial space, special use, multifamily, mixed use, and I'm sure there are others. And then you want to decide, is it for my own business? If it is, most of the commercial banks like Bank of America can help you. It's called owner-occupied commercial real estate because there's also non-owner or investment real estate. So investment commercial real estate might look like, say, a huge shopping plaza where there's a supermarket, a Panera Bread, maybe a deli, a dry cleaner, and so forth. There isn't one anchor store or owner who has 51% of the square footage. So you wanted to figure that out first. And then what is your core goal? Do you want to buy real estate for purposes of creating future wealth? Or, is it going to be something that you want to create a passive income path through by way of having tenants in the building? Are you looking to, buy a piece of real estate and sell it at a profit in 5 or 6 years? So you need to come up with your objectives first, and then also figure out geographically what makes the most sense. Am I a business that needs parking? Am I a business that needs high traffic patterns? Do I need to be in a busy area? Or am I looking for just a small office and most of the people who work for me are going to be working from home? Okay. We have that ability now in 2025 where that really wasn't very common even 10 years ago. Okay. And then secondly, once you determine your main objectives and priorities, we need to think about the actual property. And again, there are legal considerations, there are parking considerations. You need to make sure that there are no easements, or if there is an easement, what does that look like? An easement means that you're sharing a driveway or even a parking lot with a neighbor tenant. So what has the history been? How long has that easement been out there? Is there a good relationship with the tenant or the owner next door? That's very important. And also, what's the zoning of the property? Is it strictly commercial? Is it mixed use, meaning that you can have some residential apartments or a residential component? And then, of course, what is the physical condition? That's super important. You want to look at the heating system, the roof, paint or siding. You want to look at the foundation. You want to look at the structure. So you absolutely want to have a team who knows more about this than you do or than I do on your side. And that's step 3 in the process. So we always say that the quarterback of any transaction in commercial real estate is your business banker. So you want to make friends with your business banker. Again, whether you bank with Bank of America or any other financial institution, your business banker should really get to know you, understand your business model, how a dollar runs through your organization, what's important to you, short term, long term, what are your goals, your dreams, how does commercial real estate fit into your priorities and your timeline? They are in charge of quarterbacking not only your relationship at the bank, but your transaction as it relates to you becoming an owner of commercial real estate. They're going to have constant dialogue with the closing attorney or the title company, the lawyer who's going to be drawing up documents, the CPA who might be creating a real estate holding company, your insurance broker. So we don't specifically talk to appraisers or environmental evaluators because those are done by a third party. But you can see there are a lot of different players who all have the same vested interest at stake, and that's to sell you the property. So being that you and I are not licensed, we're not attorneys, we're not realtors most of the time, maybe you are part-time, who knows. You want to align yourself with the A team. And I was a commercial investor, still am, but don't do much now. And I was a commercial realtor. And I will tell you that you're going to bump into a lot of residential realtors who say, oh, yeah, I can help you. I did a commercial deal last year. That's not the person that you want, with all due respect. You really want someone who lives and breathes commercial real estate every single day. They're going to have the knowledge and the expertise. They're going to know someone if there are zoning laws that need to be addressed. They understand the world much better than someone who just bumps into a commercial property here or there. And they can really help you when it comes time to negotiate your price and the contracts. Okay. A CPA is excellent in terms of protecting you, creating a real estate holding company. Remember, I explained earlier that the last piece of property I bought, I just put it in the name of the address of the property and I incorporated it. So it's 5 Paddock Lane Incorporated versus just closing the loan in my name. Now I have too much exposure. And if I get sued, they're going to come after my real estate portfolio, my 401k, my assets. So you want to protect your biggest asset. And you do that by solidifying relationships with an attorney who can even help you with patents, intellectual property, really protecting your business, understanding and negotiating your contract. Your CPA will protect you from Uncle Sam, unnecessary taxes and liability. And last but not least, you definitely want an insurance broker who specializes in liability insurance for businesses. You're going to not only insure your business, but also the walls in and the property that you're purchasing. And there's another type of insurance that I usually bring up usually at this time in the presentation, and it's called business interruption insurance. Business interruption insurance. So when you think about the poor business owners in Los Angeles, whose businesses in some cases got burned to the ground, not only do they lose their real estate and their business, but they also lost their business income. So business interruption insurance is not instead of liability or homeowners or anything like that. It's in addition to it. And again, I'm not licensed to talk about this stuff, but at a very high level, business interruption insurance would replace a large portion of the income or revenue that you missed out on because of some sort of devastation. And every insurance company defines devastation differently. For example, in COVID, we all know people who lost their jobs or businesses who went out of business because they weren't essential. It's my understanding that a lot of business interruption insurance policies did not cover COVID. There were exclusions, but there were some that did. So you really want to work with your agent to figure out in your line of business, like what's most appropriate. But I just thought that would be a value add for this presentation. It could help someone on this call. The last piece is on us as buyers. We need to prepare for the transaction to make it easier for the business banker, the broker, et cetera. So I think a good place to start is to collect your last 3 years of personal and corporate or business tax returns and save them on your hard drive or your laptop. You also remember your best friend at the bank, your business banker. You want to sit down with your business banker. So if you're in the area, you're in the Philadelphia market, that would be Sophia, who's on the line with us. And Sophia will do a deep dive with you. She'll look at your financials. She'll create a letter of interest in some situations, really help you understand, whether or not you have the capacity to take on a mortgage and for how much based on today's interest rates. She'll put something in writing, and you're going to provide that to your business broker or your commercial real estate broker. And they will teach you how to find listings. So we like to send our clients to either Crexi, CREXI, or loopnet.com. And if we have enough time at the end, I'll do a live demo. And they're going to show you how to read and really understand commercial listings as opposed to looking at residential listings. And then, of course, once you find a property, you tour the property, you negotiate, you get all your questions answered, and then you put pen to paper and you submit an offer. That's when the attorney and the CPA really become key cogs in this process. You'll then create a real estate entity, like I spoke of. You'll talk to your insurance broker. He or she will provide a quote and the coverage for the loan. And then at the very end, you want to sit down with your attorney and you want to think about a transition plan. Like, how is real estate going to fit into your exit strategy, your will, your balance sheet, etc. So that was a lot of information. I'm just going to pause there for a moment because we have 6 or 7 minutes left. So Brittany, if there's anything in the chat that I missed, let me know. If anyone has a question or two, I would love to answer them. And I also want to open the line up for Sophia, just in case you have anything that you would like to add regarding the whole process.
I don't see anything in the chat except does the SBA cover ground up commercial space? I think you talked a little bit about that. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands or type it in the chat.
Okay. What I'm going to do while participants are thinking of questions, I'm actually going to skip this. I'll come back to this in a second. And I'm going to go into my browser and I'm going to show you all what it looks like to actually do a search around commercial property. And this is assuming that I can reshare my screen. Brittany, you can't see my open browser yet, can you?
No, we can just see the
Okay.
slideshow.
All right, cool.
Nancy, while you do that, I will just add one thing that things that come up when I connect with clients and we're talking about different
Oh,
loans and what makes sense for them. But one thing that is important that as you get ready to start connecting with a business banker, relationship manager, and they ask for your financials, make sure that they are ideally accountant prepared financials. Audited is a plus, does not need to be audited necessarily, but an accountant prepared with notes is so important because it really allows the process to be much, much faster. If today you have only company prepared, again, as you grow, it's important that you do have the right partners like an accountant firm to be able to do this for you and prepare the financials so they're ready to go for you to start looking at the lending opportunities.
Very, very good point, Sophia. And a lot of people don't realize that. So again, even if you're not looking for real estate right now, I think this is really useful information. So you know what steps to take in the future for when that opportunity does come about. A really great value add, Sophia. Thank you. So guys, I just wanted to give you a quick sneak peek as to what LoopNet looks like. The LoopNet is where many of us rely upon this website to find commercial property. So you just put the county here. I don't know why that says North Carolina. We're not in North Carolina. Let's just put Philadelphia. And you'll see there are options for lease, for sale, or auctions. So for our purposes, we're going to look for sale and then property types. So these are all the different commercial property types. So let's look for retail space, and I'm not going to choose any other filters. On the right-hand side, you'll see some of the available properties that are going to come up. So I'm just going to double click on this one on Germantown Avenue. Not for any reason. Doesn't look like it's in the best condition, but just to teach you essentially how to understand what's important. So you can certainly read the executive summaries that will talk about any improvements or lack thereof in this case of the building. It might talk about parking. They're really trying to sell you on reading more in the executive summary. And then it'll also tell you what the type is. So this is an investment or owner user. It's a retail space. You see the square footage, the year it was built, and you also see the price per square footage. And this is very, very common in the commercial world, where the nicer space obviously is more expensive than $97 per square foot. And then it also talks about tenancy and zoning. So you just kind of get an idea as to how this space either was used or could be used. It's presently vacant. It's 3 stories. It's zoned commercial, it says retail and service. And again, with commercial, it's not just the property that you're buying, it's the neighborhood, it's the traffic patterns, it's any physical obsolescence that might be around. So they also, at the bottom here, usually talk about the demographics. They sometimes get into traffic patterns and who's in the area, as it does here, how many businesses, etc. Who are the neighbor retailers or corporate partners or clients? How close are you to transportation and airports and things like that? That's essentially how you read a commercial listing. And then I'm just going to tape it back to the last page in my presentation. I'm going to put up, as I did last week too, if anyone would like to talk further about commercial real estate or essentially how we at Bank of America can help you, my QR code is here on the left-hand side. You just grab your cell phone, open your camera, and you can make an appointment. And I would then pass you on very likely to Sophia, who is a full-fledged relationship manager, business banker with a ton of experience. And what else? I'm just trying to think. I think we have, yeah, that's the last page of my slide. So again, we can open it up for any questions. or anything in the chat. Brittany, I always want to thank you for welcoming me to this amazing group. Looks like at one point we had 17 or 18 attendees, which is a really nice size. Don't be shy if there's anything that you've always wanted to ask about buying or refinancing commercial real estate. Now is your time, or we can set something up on a one-on-one basis and speak confidentially.
Yes.
So back to you, Brittany.
Thanks, Nancy. Yes, folks, please take advantage of the information that's being shared, whether it's for yourself or for another business colleague that you may know that is even considering purchasing commercial real estate, right? I think we tend to be a little hesitant about kind of having these conversations, and as you know, we're so gracious to have Bank of America be able to present this topic. So thank you both to Nancy and Sophia. You may have seen Sophia around. She actually joins a lot of our in-person events, particularly our Aurora conference as well. So thanks for joining us. Let me just double check because I think I do have Q&A. Here we go. Okay, we have some Q&A. So Pat Sanford says, I'm in the process of acquiring a property from a large entity and will receive the letter of agreement. What should I see in this agreement?
Well, when you say large property from a large organization, are we talking about like a CBRE, like a huge property management group, or is it an individual seller? I guess that's my first question.
Pat says it's commercial and the organization is a governmental known entity.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe Sophia can jump in if she knows. In Boston, what that would mean here is that it's really sort of the start of the negotiations in terms of price, commitments, sort of a laundry list, if you will, of to-dos. I don't know if that works similarly in the Pennsylvania market. Sophia, do you have any insight as to what he's referencing?
I would definitely need to double check to confirm with my credit partner that I work with in these deals, but I believe it's the same as in Boston. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes they do things backwards. Like Rhode Island is right next door to us, but they do things completely backwards. Like they do a purchase and sales contract, they get everything in writing, and then they do an inspection and then negotiate. In Massachusetts, we negotiate, we do an inspection, and then we go to contract. So that's why I was bringing that up. A lot of states work differently. So I'm not sure that that answered your question, but I do appreciate you coming to the table with a question, and congratulations. It sounds like you're near the end, and certainly wish you well. And I hope you have favorable financing terms. If you don't, we'd absolutely love to talk with you. I know that our interest rates and terms, and I can say this with conviction, are the absolute best in the industry. Now, that's not to say that we are the best at everything. We definitely have our weaknesses, but with commercial real estate, owner occupied, we would never ever lose a deal or have less than favorable terms in comparison to what's out there. That is absolutely our strong suit. Any other questions, Brittany?
Anonymous attendee has asked, is there any credit score minimum requirement for the owner? So I'm assuming purchasing.
Yeah.
What is minimum?
Usually it's 660, and I know Sophia will correct me if I'm wrong. But it's been 660 for a long time. And as Sophia said, you want to start putting your financials together sooner than later. It doesn't mean that you're buying a property, but we can provide that letter of intent where it gives you sort of that peace of mind. It's that piece of paper that all the brokers kind of look at or look for, and that it entitles you to actually see properties like in your price range versus just looking at any property that interests you, whether or not you can afford it and you have the capacity to pay the mortgage. That's always really important. All right.
Naima Gibbs. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But Naima, make sure that you grab Nancy's information so that you can speak privately. But I think that's it for the questions so far.
All right. You want to tell them what's up next week, Brittany? Next
Um,
Wednesday?
Real quick, Brittany, I did share with you via email a link to my website that has my contact details. If you don't mind sharing that via the chat, that way,
Okay.
if anybody wants to connect, I'm happy to.
Okay. Do we want to put your email in the chat?
Either way, it's just easier with the website because it has more information and there's a link to make an
Got
appointment.
it.
So,
Okay. Okay.
the website is, I think, looks nicer.
No, no worries. I'm gonna grab it really quickly so that I can put it in the chat for everybody that's here.
Let me stop sharing too, and then you can take it away.
Um,
There you go, Britt.
see. Sorry, folks.
Meanwhile, next Wednesday, we're going to talk about social media, and we're going to share some tips and tricks for not only gaining that social media audience that you all need, but a few digital strategies to get you noticed and to really make an impact on your business. So hopefully you'll join us again next Wednesday, same time.
Yes, all right. So I was able to grab Sophia's information. I'm gonna drop it in the chat so everyone can have. It's gonna be a long link, but in case anybody wants to grab that and kind of just put it on their phones or their web browsers on their devices. And yes, this is part 2 of our series with Bank of America. Join us next week. We will be here, Nancy and I, and maybe Sophia.
Yeah. And you know
um,
what? I was wrong. Next week is sustainability, not
sustainability.
social media. I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I did
So
wrong S.
it's okay. So yeah, if you're not aware, next week is sustainability. Sustainability has been a conversation that has been coming up significantly with a lot of our local and national corporate members. So if you aren't tapped into what sustainability practices and kind of implementations that you can provide in your business, please join us for that webinar as well. We'll be back here, same time, same place, same platform. And yes, thank you for joining us. If anyone else, feel free if you need to stay on. I think we may have a couple minutes left, but if you want to stay just to ask a question or anything like that, please feel free. Where can I find Nancy's info? Nancy, could you pop up your slide again if
I
possible?
sure can. Just give me 1 second.
All right, we're gonna pop her information up as well.
And for anyone who would love to catch up, I typically meet with clients daily. I can do evening appointments. I have a very flexible calendar. And then, as I said, if there's anything immediate that you want to do, I will then be passing you on to Sophia, with whom you can make an appointment, whether it's in person or what have you. And she will do a really, really good job for you in terms of advocating for you. Everybody needs an advocate at a bank. So here's my contact info. Just grab your cell phone, open up the QR code, and you'll have all my information.
Amy has asked, how easy is it to transfer personal property to business or vice versa?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is you're not necessarily transferring it to commercial. You have to get it zoned commercial, and you have to go before the zoning board or the ZBA committee. It's not easy, but it is definitely possible. It's just a process. And you would have to find out, you probably want to get an attorney on that actually. And the attorney would represent you at the ZBA meeting. And then you would have to convert the insurance to commercial liability insurance. And then if you need a mortgage, that kind of changes things too. You would want to put the property itself into some sort of real estate holding company. again, protect your assets. So hopefully that helps you, Amy.
Right. If anybody has a question, I'm gonna give like maybe one more minute or so because we are over time.
I always go over time. That's my fault, Brittany.
No, it's fine. I don't have anything scheduled after this, but
Okay, they
um,
might though. They're running their businesses. They're busy.
yeah. But all right, folks, I think this is the end of the program. Again, next week we'll be back to talk about sustainability. Really, really think about ways we can help save save some energy, save some, money, and figure out what best practices are for our businesses. So thank you for joining us. We will catch you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Make it a great day. Thank you,
Yeah.
Brittany. Thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
thank you.
Sophia, thank you so much.